Welcome back, Fantasy Fiction Fanatics. It's great to see you again, and I hope you're doing well. Today's class is going to be a little bit different since it's not intended to be a full-length class today. It's going to be a much shorter class because as I was getting into the next 5 chapters, the first 5 chapters of Dragons of Spring Dawning, I realized there's quite a bit to talk about as the start of this new book, and I wanted to spend a whole class period on that, on the first 5 chapters, because there's quite a bit to talk about. A lot of things are happening, and I still wanted to do the comparison, the bridge over that we did between 1 and 2, where we looked at the 2 covers, the 2 beginnings, seeing what we are seeing, how we think it's going to transition from one book to the next, and have that as kind of like a little bit of a segue into the next one. And I just wanted to do that again, so I thought we could do maybe a little bit of a mini episode here to compare and contrast and see what we want to see for the upcoming next couple of chapters and next book. So yeah, that's what we're going to be discussing today. And first we're just going to do a little bit of a recap between books 1 and book 2. So I remember when we originally talked about them, we talked about how the coloring and who we thought was on the cover of each one. We felt like this one is much more brighter. It does obviously look toward autumn, and just the symbolism of kind of autumn being not really a beginning because that's spring, but more like a refresher. I mean, the leaves are falling off. So it's the beginning of change. There we go. That's what I was looking for. The beginning of change is what we kind of discussed versus this much more somber, deeper tones, and being winter being the time of death and destruction, I guess you could say symbolically. That's winter is known for sadness and despair and all that kind of stuff. So that's how we contrasted numbers 1 and 2, looked at the beginning, the covers, the title, the characters on the front, who we guessed who they were, looked at the first picture for the first book and things like that. So we're going to go ahead and do that between books 2 and 3 now and see what we think is going to be happening from transitioning between this book and this book. So let's go ahead and just remind ourselves of what we have here and what we think. So we already talked about how we felt like the Dragons of Winter Night was going to be symbolically winter, death, destruction, despair, everything that, all the sad connotations that winter brings, struggling to survive with the snow, struggling to keep warm, despair, darkness because it's dark out more than it's light out, with the sun not being as long of days with the sun. So it's really looked like how this book ended up being. Really sad, depressing portion of the story really got dark, deep very quickly, especially at the end here with Strum's death and all the despair of thinking that they weren't going to make it. It really does, the title really did show that this was going to be the very low portion of the story, the part where we go down and down and down until you've reached rock bottom. And right now, at the end of this book, they are at rock bottom. They barely survived the rock bottom. So, and then we talked about how the cover is also very reminiscent of it being rock bottom, of it being winter, being cold, with the blue undertones being much more, especially we're going to compare it to the first one, much more somber, not so bright, very muted tones, very muted coloring. We have the dragon in the back, which now we know must be Sky. Kitiara's dragon is who I would guess it to be. If you look really, really closely, you're probably not going to be able to see this on camera at all, but there is a rider. Barely see it. That must be Kit. If we are going to take a guess, at least if I'm going to take a guess, that's definitely who I would say that's going to be, since she is the main evil High Lord that we know of in this book. And we've got Strum. So sad for Strum, but we obviously have Strum here since he is the only knight in our group and was the main focus, especially of the last several chapters. We can officially say now that this must be Lorana with her really long hair and her new armor and her getting ready to fight. I always thought this was a spear here because it doesn't really look like a lance, but I'm almost wondering if this is a Dragonlance. Because, yeah, forever I always used to think, oh, she's holding a spear, but I don't remember her having a spear. But she does help wield the Dragonlances, and maybe that's what this is meant to be. Though, my traditional thought of what a lance would be like is something that looks more like, you know, when they do in jousting and riding on the horses and joust each other. It was like a lance. But maybe this is meant to be the Dragonlance, and maybe it's just more of a spear-like looking, spear-like looking object than I was thinking. I don't know. What do you guys think? Do you think this is the spear? Or do you think this is the Dragonlance? Let me know what you think. And then, of course, we've got Tass down here. I love Tass with his little top knot and the dragon orb. He found 2 of them in this book. There was 2 of them. So, obviously, that is a Dragonlance. He didn't actually use the Dragonlance, not the Dragonlance, the dragon orb, sorry. He didn't actually use an orb. He just found them and broke one of them. So, it looks like he's wielding this one. He did read the inscriptions with his glasses that he had, so maybe that could be interpreted of him as using it. But yeah, so it looks like those are the 3 characters they decided to depict on this cover. Let's see, from the background, it looks basically like it's depicting the very last battle at the tower, the High Clerist's tower that they were defending, their last stance, and that's definitely against Kitiara. So that is my guess on where they're at right here in this this cover. The last one, they looked like, we discovered they thought they looked like Solus with the inn of the last home in the tree here. So, and Solus being in the tree, so that's where we guess this was, which is where they started, and this looks like it's depicting where they ended. So, pretty interesting to look at the cover before and after. It looks like a lot of our thoughts and feelings on those that we discussed came true. Not all of them, and we have a little bit more background on what the background is, where they're actually located. Again, I think now that I'm actually thinking about it, that this must be a Dragonlance instead of a spear. And I actually discovered that Kitiara is actually riding this dragon. So we did make some headway, some new assumptions now that we've got some more knowledge about our book, now that we finished the book. So let's now compare it to our very, very colorful 3rd book. So we're going to compare all 3. Let's see if I have enough hands for this. Okay. So we've got pretty colorful, but it's still like, you know, obviously fall colors. They're not super, super bright. We've got definitely the very muted winter colors here in the middle. And then this one is really super bright colors. We've got the bright green, the bright orange of the flame there, really vibrant purple in the background. So we've got a lot more color going on here. All right. So let's take a closer look. So this is Dragons of Spring Dawning. So it's pretty good assumption if we're following the theme of what we have of the seasons. We had the beginning of change, which is essentially the very definition of book 1 with the Dragons of Autumn Twilight. So autumn very much emboldened the symbolic meaning of change and starting of an adventure here. Then we had Winter Night, which again, deep, dark, depressing, especially with, we had Autumn Twilight, which twilight means it's starting to get dark, but not actually dark. It's like the time between light and dark, which goes along with the change. Then we had the night portion, where it's very dark, so it's winter night, so we've got the snow falling, which makes the night even darker. We've got the depression, the despair from the winter, and scary things happen at night. So we've got the very, very rock bottom symbolicness of the title. And then we have spring dawning, which is the complete opposite. This means at spring, if we're going to follow our little symbolic meaning of the seasons, spring is all about new beginnings, new life, the starting of something new and fresh and good in the world. And we've got dawning, which means it's the beginning, or the start of a new day. So we've got the start of new life at the start of a new day. So it seems like, based on the title, if we're following correctly, the symbolism of the title is leading us to believe that things are going to start getting better, and it's going to be the beginning of something new. A new Kryn, a new world, whatever that means. Technically, I guess it could mean that the war ends and evil wins, and that would still be the start of something new. But I feel like if we're going to follow the trajectory of most stories, we've reached rock bottom, and hopefully this spring dawning means that we're going to start shooting back up, and we're going to start a projection of something good and new. And that through this war, through all the hardships that they have, we're going to start something brand new, something fresh and good, because spring is new life. And if evil wins, I can't imagine that new life would be coming into. It'd just be death and destruction all the way around. So we're going to have to see. Maybe evil will win, and it will be that kind of spring dawning, but I have high hopes that we will discover something great and new that's not evil, conquering all. Let me know what you think of how we've analyzed all three of these titles and where you think this title is leading us. If you have any thoughts, comments, concerns, questions, anything like that, make sure you leave a comment down below. All right, so now let's look at the actual depiction of the cover. I don't know if I mentioned this last time. I think I might have, but I have to mention it again, is that these covers, the drawings are always so good that they almost look like they're like a picture. I don't know if you guys have a paper copy, or if you're on a Kindle copy or whatever else, but if you have a paper copy and you have these covers, really look at them really closely, because it almost looks like it could be a photograph sometimes, and then other times you realize it's a drawing, and obviously it is a drawing, but it's just so good and lifelike that it really feels like it could be a photograph sometimes. So props to the author. They did a really great job with these. Okay, so I think the characters, now that we have gone through 2 books, are pretty much obvious who is on the cover here. And I think, no, we didn't get through everybody, but we got through a lot of the group on each of these covers. So obviously the one with the fire here is Razlan, because that's the only mage we know other than Fizbin. But I don't think it's Fizbin, because we've got the white hair, and we've got the, well, it doesn't totally look like red. It looks more like black robes. So that's an interesting thing, is because it's definitely not red. I don't know if you can see very well the coloring here, but this is definitely not a red. It's not even a dark brown. It definitely looks like it's much more of a black. So that'll be interesting to see why it's black and not red, since Razlan up to this point has been red robes, other than in the dream. We're going to see about that. But he does have that staff that he always has here, and Fizbin doesn't have a staff, as far as I remember. And Fizbin also didn't wear black robes. It could be Fizbin in the fact that this is a fire, and Fizbin did want to shoot those fireball spells. But I think it's safe to say, we're 100% sure. Let's see, I'm trying to look. I can't see his eyes well enough to know if they're hourglass. But he does have kind of pasty-ish skin and the white hair, so I'm going to guess that this is Razlan, especially considering behind him is a giant warrior, which the only other warrior we have who could be anything like this would be Caramon. You could also possibly say that it's Riverwind, but Riverwind is a plainsman, and I don't think he would have the same armor and the giant sword that Caramon does, and that is what it looks like it's depicting here. So it looks like we're depicting the twins here. Razlan in the front and Caramon in the back. Caramon looks actually pretty different than what I always imagined him to be on this cover. He's got this helmet. I'm not really sure about the helmet. I don't remember specifically any helmet that Caramon wears. Interesting with the fin looking things on the side And the really long hair, I never imagined him having that long of hair. But hey, he does look pretty cool though, doesn't he? So we've got Razlan here, Razlan, and then we've got Caramon. And then over here, away from everybody else, we've got who I, of course, am going to be assuming is Kitiara. We've got the kind of purplish blue, and we've got the dragon. I don't know if you can see close enough, if this is going to have a good enough picture. The kind of dragon scales on the skin of her armor here. And her black curly hair, which she's always been described running her hands through so far. Sorry, I'm taking a moment to look at it pretty closely too myself. I think the giant cape on the back looks pretty cool. It looks like she's wearing some kind of headband too that matches. We don't see her helmet or anything like that on her, but I think it's very, very safe to say that this is Kitiara because nobody else has been described like this, and she is in the colors of the dragon that she wears, like I said, and the dragon kind of based armor. So we've got really the family. We've got the twins and the half-sister all on one cover, which I think is going to be interesting on what that says about this story and what this is going to be about. Because as we noticed with this one especially, these are the three characters we really end with. Obviously Flint was there as well, but these are the three main characters that make the biggest difference in that battle at the end of book 3. So what does this mean for these three characters being on the cover? Obviously, Kitiara is going to be much more a thing in this book since she is now the main evil person that we know. She's one of the highest High Lords as well. So that's going to be interesting. We're going to have a lot more of her. And then we've got Razlan and Caramon, who we don't really know what their significance is going to be at this point. There hasn't been any major signs of what's going to be happening in the book with them at this point. They've kind of even taken a little bit of a backseat. Tanis and his whole group kind of has, especially in this ending of the last book, since they were focusing on Strum and the Knights and all that. So we're going to be seeing possibly why these two would be on the cover and what their significance in this particular ending of this book is going to be. And I also don't know where they're at. I can't tell as of yet where they're located. We do see this gate, and we do see a tower up here in the back, and this tree here. Now that I'm looking at it a little bit closer, I have a guess of where this might be, but I might be totally wrong. So I think we'll go ahead and do the same thing we did before, and we'll be able to analyze the actual background after we're done and we actually have a chance to see where they're at and where they're going. So we'll go ahead and see about that later, but it'll be interesting. We'll know to keep an eye out for this location. Tree, and looks like grass and stuff like that, and then this is in front of some kind of tower or something. So it'll be interesting to see where that goes. Now let's just really quick, like we did the last time, look at the first picture like we did the last one. It looks like we're going to be starting off with a dragon. It's very possible that it could be Sky, since that's the only main dragon that we really know at this point, which is Kit's dragon. Looks like he's flying through some clouds, so it doesn't give us much on the starting of what the first book will be about. So let's see what we had for the first one over here again. This was definitely Sky. So we had Sky here, and I know that was definitely Sky because that's where we started, was like the second chapter. Yeah, the second chapter was the same thing, and that was where we talked about Sky and Kitiara, though we didn't know it was Kit at the time. So this looks like the same dragon. So my guess is this is Sky flying through the sky. So we'll see what that means as we go ahead and start our first 5 chapters. The only thing I do want to give out a shout out to, I know this is like kind of late in coming considering this is book 3, but we do have this map here. I don't think I mentioned this when we first started. Maps are always really fun in fantasies when they draw their own map, and I do actually look at it. I've read it so many times that I don't look at it as often because I always used to analyze it beforehand at other times with when I was reading it, but this is really interesting to look at. If you guys haven't looked at the maps yet, go ahead and see if you can see the different places that the story has taken us yet and see where they've been, because they've been all over the place. And then as you continue forward, you'll get to see where they're going more as we go forward, and you can see kind of where they're going and how far those destinations are. All right, so thanks for joining me for this little mini lesson episode for our Dragonlance, just to do our covers here and relate back and see what we're seeing for the transition between book 2 and book 3. And so don't forget to read chapters 1 through 5 of Dragons of Spring Dawning for our next class on it. And we'll get to go ahead and see how we start off this third and final chapter of the main story of Dragonlance. Obviously, like I said, we'll probably continue Dragonlance and the story that continues on in the next trilogy and the next books after that at a later date, but this is going to end the main section of the story that we are talking about right now. So I'll see you guys on the next lesson, and I hope you have a great and wonderful day. See ya!